Before we begin today's events, I want to invite His Beatitude to tell us a little bit more about that work and about Mica's faith. So please join me in welcoming His Holiness Theophilus.
Good evening to everybody. It's a great honor for me to be in this special gathering today in honor of Mica Ertegun. Vice Chancellor, Professor Grimley, Mr. Russian Ertegun, Mrs. Vagner, distinguished Ertegun scholars, ladies and gentlemen. On this auspicious occasion, when we gather to celebrate the significant contribution of late Mrs. Mica Ertegun to this university, I bring you greetings from the Patriarchate and the Christian community of the Holy City of Jerusalem, another community to which she was so wonderfully generous. We have come to you from a land of conflict and pain. For over a year, our communities there have endured the impact of war. The streets of the old city of Jerusalem are empty of pilgrims. The shops and businesses are shut, and the hotels go unbooked. So first and foremost, I ask that you keep our communities, local Christians, and the entire region in your prayers. We pray for peace and healing. Yet, even in this time of darkness and despair, we find hope. The hope of the Christian community is grounded in the crucifixion and the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm here to speak about the Church of the Resurrection and the significant contribution that Mrs. Ertegun made to ensure that this most sacred place in Jerusalem and around the world would remain a place of pilgrimage and hope to countless people into the future. It was a privilege to know Ms. Ertegun in 1964 in Jerusalem at the Mount of Olives, our residence there, hosted by my predecessor, late Peter Benedictus, housed the historical meeting between the late Pope Paul VI and the late Patriarch Athenagoras. This momentous meeting historically led to the rescinding of the anathema between the churches. In this residence, I was subsequently privileged to host Pope Francis and the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartolomeo, commemorating the 15th year anniversary of 1964. It was there that I first met Mrs. Ertegun, who accompanied the delegation from the USA. I also fondly remember when Ms. Ertegun hosted us for a dinner at the wonderful home in Manhattan, and we broke bread with her, along with our beloved Linda and dear father Alex. Mrs. Ertegun's vast experience and expertise in interior design, music, art, and cultural and religious preservation are well known. The Holy Sepulchre, full of chapels and passageways, is not known for its interior design, nor would the simultaneous liturgies and chanting be quick to catch the attention of Atlantic records. But what I believe Mrs. Ertegun saw was a symphony of stories of the death and the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, to whom she was clearly devoted, the diversity and hope for the unity of the Church, and the commitment to the Church of the Resurrection itself, a place where the world meets in worship. In the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, one can walk through a series of rooms, and there you will find a small window. Upon opening the window, one finds that one is not looking outside to the old city, but rather is inside into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Below one is the Holy Edicule, the holy and life-giving tomb of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the place of his resurrection. It is the spiritual home for all Christians, whether they be from Jerusalem, Oxford, the United States, or beyond. The Mica and Ahmed Ertegun program here at Oxford supports impressive studies dedicated to enlarging the knowledge of the scholars, extending their vision, and providing for them a forum for the exchange of ideas. Such an expanding of sympathies happens through meaningful encounters, the same kind of encounters that I can witness from this window in the dome of the Church of the Resurrection as I watch pilgrims stream in, communities from around the world worshiping alongside one another, and types of people mixing in the courtyard. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is hope made tangible. In our ministry to all people, we ensure the doors are kept open so all may come face to face with the story of the resurrection of our Lord. This makes the Church of the Holy Sepulchre unique. All are welcome to witness the hope of Christianity regardless of faith, ethnicity, or nationality. We are called to be stewards of the Church, but over the centuries, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre fell into a poor state of disrepair. The edicule, damaged badly by fire in 1808, was restored in 1810 and reinforced by the British in 1934 during their mandate as a temporary measure, yet two permanent repairs were made. For over 200 years, a skeleton of iron bars kept the edicule intact, but serious work was needed. Many churches share the Holy Sepulchre, and many communities, as you know, which at our best exemplifies one body made of many parts. However, this led to immense difficulty in conducting the very necessary renovations to the church. For centuries, the communities in the Holy Sepulchre could not reach an agreement to conduct restorations on the Holy Sepulchre and, crucially, the tomb of Christ. Recognizing the urgent need, when I was elected Patriarch in 2005, I dedicated myself to repairing relations and navigating the labyrinth of authorities to ensure that this most sacred place could stand for centuries for the benefit of future generations. In God's providence, Mrs. Mica Ertegun, through the World Monuments Fund, heard of the challenges we faced and stepped in, alongside a donation from the privy purse of His Majesty King Abdallah II of Jordan, the Hashemite custodian of the Muslim and Christian holy sites. Mrs. Ertegun's contribution of generosity and philanthropy became a catalyst to unite the churches and encourage the authorities to give a green light to the monumental renovations. Covered by new outlets around the world, the renovations revealed tremendous findings. These included the discovery that under the Crusader era stone, which lies on top of the tomb itself, there is a part of the rock tomb dating back to the time of Emperor Constantine, who issued the order for the construction of the church in the 4th century. This finding could not have been possible without Mrs. Ertegun. Her donation enable the restoration of this most sacred place to the world. Millions of people have entered and continue to enter the Holy Tomb to pray at the burial site of our Lord, connecting with their faith in a powerful and deeply meaningful way. Mrs. Ertegun is a quiet but key part of this remarkable story, and her legacy goes beyond the stones of the church, for it has also greatly impacted the living stones of Jerusalem, the Christian community. Perhaps the most important part of her legacy is the effect that her generosity had on the churches in Jerusalem. The work of the renovation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre ushered in a new era of ecumenical relations and continued deepening of the association of the Council of Patriarchs and Heads of the Churches in the Holy Land. Never before have relations between the churches been so positive. Today, the Council of the Patriarchs and Heads of the Churches continue to meet regularly to discuss matters pertinent to the wider Christian population in the Holy Land. The Council has become a beacon of hope for Christians in the region, a community that is often overlooked. We address with the united voices issues of concern of our community and protection of the right of worship, as well as the status quo of the holy sites in the Holy Land. We engage more constructively with diplomats and organizations invested in the support and preservation of the Christian community. The good work of the Council has enabled us to undertake further critical renovations to the Holy Sepulchre in recent years. Mrs. Ertegun planted a seed, the fruits of which we will continue to harvest for years to come. Hers is truly a living legacy. Mrs. Ertegun's vision and commitment to Jerusalem and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre were admirable and profoundly transformative. And because of this, it was my great honor to bestow on her the Order of the Grand Commander of the Holy Sepulchre when I last sat with her before she passed away last year. I would like to conclude these remarks with an invitation. We invite you all to Jerusalem. Come and see the holy places, especially the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, to which Mrs. Ertegun was devoted. Walk in the footsteps of Jesus and see the ancient stone brought to life by the local Christians who have worked, raised families, and worshiped there for centuries. We particularly would like to extend this invitation to Ertegun scholars that you may engage in your studies in the rich history and diverse mosaic of the Holy City, in the presence of the sites that inspired our common benefactor and friend. I encourage you all to visit Jerusalem and see the fruits of Mrs. Ertegun's generosity in the restored Church of the Holy Sepulchre. May the Almighty's mercy be upon Ertegun, and may her memory be eternal, and may her living legacy continue to inspire others to give themselves to support education, humanities, the arts, and the spiritual and religious heritage of our community, of our humanity. Thank you very much for being here.
Right. Heartfelt thanks to His Beatitude for his kind words and for doing us the honor of being here. And once more, a warm welcome to him and a warm welcome back to many of you to the Ertegun House on behalf of the Ertegun alumni. My name is Michele Bianconi, and I'm currently a departmental lecturer at Classics and Linguistics, but more importantly, I was an Ertegun Scholar between 2015 and 2018. And thank you. And have been an alumnus ever since. As many of us here today, the last few years of my life would not have been the same without Mica Ertegun's vision. I, for one, would simply not have been able to obtain a doctorate from Oxford and everything that came after if it weren't for the Ertegun Scholarship. I was lucky enough to meet Mica Ertegun on a few occasions, and I'm now here alongside my friend and colleague, Stefan Nitu, to introduce a number of people, a number of friends who have come together here to commemorate Mica and essentially say thank you for everything that she has done for the humanities and not only. As the Vice-Chancellor reminded us that we have had 12 years of the scholarship. So today we have 12 Ertegun alumni who will come on stage now on their own in pairs and in one case in a trio to share their memories of Mica, of their time at the house, and to share how this experience has been transformative in their lives. After that, we have a little surprise that we should credit Stefan with. He will share it with us. This is something that he has put together thanks to the contribution of so many alumni around the world, many of which have now come together and formed an Ertegun Alumni Society. So it is my pleasure now to invite on stage Joe Snape, Tobias Tanton, and Charlie Draper from the very first cohort of Ertegun Scholars. Please.
Thank you so much, Michele. As a student of theology, I feel like I have a particularly hard act to follow this afternoon, but that's really just par for the course here at Ertegun House, I feel. As Michele mentioned, my name's Tobias Tanton, and I had the great privilege of being what Brian now calls a foundation scholar. I did an MPhil in theology and religion here, and we all began in 2012. Gosh, we're getting old, friends. Earlier this week, I had a slightly surreal experience of meeting with a student to discuss their plans for graduate study, and we inevitably discussed funding opportunities. I tried to give them all the usual practicalities, observed that master's funding is a bit more difficult to come by than doctoral funding, but the Ertegun Scholarship is pushing back and opening up doors there. And then, again, probably a symptom of my age, I ended up reminiscing about my own process of applying for the Ertegun Scholarship in a long and winding narrative that probably wasn't particularly helpful for this student. However, I have vivid memories of applying, receiving a very exciting email saying I'd been nominated to be shortlisted, and they wanted to interview me. The interview, I remember, took place while I was still in Australia, and it happened at about 2 or 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, Australian time. I sent a very enthusiastic email saying, yes, I'd love to be interviewed, but also tried to impress that I may be in a semi-conscious state during the course of the interview. A few days later, I received an email from Podrig, who I think is here, explaining that there had been a large number of very excellent applicants, and unfortunately the university wasn't able to accept all of them, and sorry, but I had not got a place on the Ertegun Scholarship. As you can probably guess, that isn't quite the end of the story. About a month later, when I'd completely given up hope of finding any feasible way to make it to Oxford, and was completely out of the blue, I received a second email saying that someone had been unable to take up their place, and there was one going, would I still be interested? I kind of mulled for a few moments and thought that one over and wrote back a very quick response. The rest, as they say, is history. I had 2 very happy years as an Ertegun scholar. That allowed me to get a funded place as a DPhil. I ended up moving to the swampy East Anglian Fens for a one-year postdoc at a university there, and then had a 4-year teaching post before ending up back here in Oxford at Harris Manchester College, the very college where I did my Ertegun Masters, and am now an early career fellow and tutor in theology there, hence my meetings with students, advising them on graduate funding. The touch-and-go nature of my own journey, my own admissions process, has often caused me to reflect on an alternative universe in which that second email never came. I don't want to be too dramatic. I don't think I would have ended up in the gutter or begging for bread or anything like that. I probably would have applied to a continental European university which had a later cut-off date for applications, and everything would have been okay. But at the same time, that alternative universe is one in which I wouldn't have had so many of the rich experiences that I've had here in Oxford, not least in Ertegun House, in its scholarly community, in its interdisciplinary seminars, in its casual kitchen conversations. And I'll leave it to my friends and colleagues and fellow scholars to fill in some of the texture and detail from their own experiences of just how rich that experience is. I've never met the person who didn't take up their place as an Ertegun scholar. I also wonder about their alternative universe. I don't know what their reasons were, but if I ever run into them, I'll say a little thank you, and I'll be sure to impress on them just how much they missed out on. The real thanks, of course, though, belongs to Mica for making it all possible, and the fact that I ended up here when I very well might not have has left me with an enduring gratitude and a poignant sense of just how many doors were opened, just what an amazing platform the Ertegun Scholarship was. And so thank you, Mica, for all the possibilities.
"12 years ago, I applied to do a Master's in Music at Oxford, and they agreed to have me. Soon after that news, I found myself reading a most curious and unsolicited document, an unpolished scrap of a PDF that asked enormous questions about just how fantastically I would change the future. This was the first iteration of what I now gather is a much glitzier Ertegun Scholarship admissions process. While none of us had the foggiest idea about how the scholarship should be run in that heady first year, I soon learned that of all the benefits that Ertegun House bestowed on its residents, perhaps one of the greatest was the degree of unearned respect it afforded those of us lucky enough to be here. And so it was that I suddenly found myself studying with one of the all-time greats of music and anthropology, Georgina Bourne. This work wasn't always easy, nor was it always reasonable. More than a few times I stayed late at the house preparing summaries of texts and arguments for Gina so that she'd have them in the morning. But the personal and professional doors that this opened up as a direct consequence of walking through that front door determined much of the last decade of my life. I stayed on at the house for another year as we wrote up our findings from time spent in California and Japan studying computer music cultures, and then I went to New York to do my PhD. When I think of Ertegun, I think of intensity, of opportunity, and of adventures beginning. But despite the logic implicit in that 2012 email, the PDF, from Ertegun House, neither personal nor professional lives are always linear. In the home stretch of my time at NYU, for example, there was the small matter of a global pandemic. And at the same time, I took quite ill in Athens, Greece, where I was working on a project involving history's oldest computer as part of a project at the National Museum of Archaeology there. I was very ill, it turns out, and spent the better part of a year on the operating table and receiving radio and chemotherapy. As you can see, I got lucky and I'm mostly still here. Eventually, I did get the thing done in 45-minute spurts of writing, which was about as long as I could concentrate back then, and I defended my PhD on Zoom in April 2021. After a string of close calls with postdocs in the post-pandemic chaos of UK academic hiring, I cut my losses and returned to my practical music-making roots. These days, I spend about 2/3 of my time writing and playing music for money, which is one of the silliest things I've ever heard anybody say. And the third, what I've increasingly come to think of as the most important third, I spend coaching and mentoring a ragtag bunch of 11 young people from some of the most deprived neighbourhoods in the country up in Newcastle, where I live. We read books together, we make music, draw pictures, write our own stories, shoot films, and code video games. Through the humanities, together we broaden each other's horizons. This year, my first student, a bright young girl called Rebecca, is applying to study English at my own alma mater in the swamps of East Anglia, something she'd not have done had we not met. I see this as in no small part Mica's gift paid forward. And if that's not changing the future, then what is? And so I want to say this, while today is a marvellous opportunity to come together and take stock of Ertegun's successes and our progress in realising Mica's vision for the programme over these last 12 years, we've barely begun. So here's to the next 12 years, and the next 12, and the next 12, and the next, and the next, and the next. Thank you, Mica.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charlie Draper, and like Joe and Tobias, I was one of the very first intake of Ertegun scholars reading Egyptology. The opportunity to come back here and say thank you to Mica, the lady whose imagination and powerful vision made all this possible, is tremendously important to me, and I'm really happy that the three of us have had the chance to come back and say thank you here. There were 16 of us in those days, and when we arrived, we could still smell the fresh paint. The press called it the academic stairway to heaven, and it was. At the heart of everything was this house. Edifying furnishings expertly chosen by Mica left nothing to chance. Even the angle poise lamps were functional works of art. With the arrival of this first cohort, the house quickly became a home. Thanks largely to Brian, traditions were invented, book groups, tours, colloquia, conferences, corners of the building were quickly occupied for various creative endeavours. Joe set up a den in the basement for technological tinkering. My theremin, an amplifier, quickly gained a home in this very annex. Various items of essential kitchen equipment were acquired, most crucially a microwave dish for those late-night research sessions. It would be fantastic if we had an electric piano in here, for, if we want to do concerts, one of us said offhand in a meeting. And a few weeks later, a grand piano materialised, donated by Mica's very close friend, Harvey Goldsmith. This was the kind of philanthropic magic that Mica enabled everywhere she went. But beyond these things that she so adeptly assembled were the people. I made very good friends here. That was the keystone, the foundation of the experience at Oxford. Our unflappable director, Brian Ward-Perkins, Anita Gosch, Kelly Dixon, together ensured the smooth running of the programme. And Linda Vagner, whose peerless attention to detail ensured that every one of Mica's arrivals, quite rightly, gained the air of a state visit. And in return, I think we worked quite hard. My MPhil thesis was about the movement of people and ideas, mostly between Egypt and Mesopotamia. I published a couple of short articles as a consequence of it, one of them about evidence corroborating the Book of Kings, the other about a fragmentary Egyptian story written in Demotic. I'm no longer working in the humanities. I now work for an AI road safety startup, strangely enough. But the lessons that this program taught continue to resonate with me. Broad-mindedness, collaboration, the serendipity of ideas from unexpected places, the vital importance of art and human creativity. And at the heart of it all, the root of it, was Mica. And like this beautiful linden tree that's just been planted and that will grow for centuries more, the saplings of this programme will spread around the world. And I have every expectation, as I imagine do most people here, that this scholarship will continue to flourish and grow similarly, just like that tree. And for all of this, I thank Mica very, very deeply for all that she's done for those who are here and those who will be here in future. So thank you to her.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for having us here, inviting us back to this very special place. I'm Stephanie Ode, and I did my DPhil here in 2014, so I stayed for 3 years, 2014 to 2017. And I'm here, like everybody else, to express my thanks to this incredible, quiet, humble, and thoughtful woman who has left so much to us and to the future here at Oxford and across the humanities. Now 7 years since leaving Oxford and leaving Ertegun House, I consider that this place is not just a scholarship, it's not just a workspace, it's a community and it's a network, but it's also an opportunity to cement our own values individually and to set and align our priorities for our life and how we can influence those around us in a positive and humanistic way. As I've been thinking on this, I've been breaking it down in my own life into 3 specific spheres. The academic, I suppose, the professional, and for many of you, that is one and the same. For me, it's slightly separate, and the personal. Academically, the drive that I developed here at Ertegun House has given me the momentum to create space in my life, to allow opportunity for thought and reflection, for academic impetus. Just 2 weeks ago, my first book was published. It was the culmination of my DPhil project. It took 10 years, and it was mostly done late night, 45-minute stints. But I would like to say that that would not have been possible without Mica, not just because of the foundation of Ertegun House, but because without her, I wouldn't have had the belief in the meaningfulness of interdisciplinary research. She cemented for me the value of cross-disciplinary thinking and the place that the opportunity for developing this research still has. Professionally, I now teach classics in a big boarding school, but my real purpose, I think, professionally comes from developing a specific cross-disciplinary scholarship course for 16-year-olds, where we focus on curiosity, learning for learning's sake, collaboration, how to assist others in collaborating and developing, and how to use dialogue meaningfully to listen to other ideas and to develop a sense of those around. Personally, as well, I now have 2 children of my own and another one on the way. And I think a lot about their futures, and I think about what matters as a parent, what I would like for the next generation. And above all, I hope that they will appreciate cultural opportunities, cultural diversity, that they'll value learning, and that they'll have a desire to have a positive impact on others and on the world around them. Mica is a role model for so many of us and for myself. I think of her every day in some shape of my life. And that represents itself as in the value of the humanities, the purpose of learning, the function of collaboration and the potential for positively impacting lives, thinking about those near and far in this world. So it's with heartfelt thanks that I say, Mica, thank you for everything you have done for me and for all of us here.
Thank you, Steph. It's a wonderful privilege to be here today to speak. I'm Dr. Jacob Downs. I am currently a departmental lecturer in the music faculty here, but back in 2015 worked towards a master's in music. I came up to Oxford as an undergraduate from a state school in the southwest of England and started studying under the tutelage of our esteemed director, Professor Jonathan Cross, and got the bug very quickly. But there was no way in hell that I would be able to take on postgraduate study at all until somebody told me about the Ertegun programme. The Ertegun name for me was always synonymous with music, and it was very exciting to be able to apply. I remember a call with the Director of Graduate Studies at the time, who was audibly jumping up and down with delight to tell me the good news, and I echoed this enthusiasm. Joining Ertegun House, it was like being greeted with open arms. It was quite extraordinary. Student experience, I think, especially now working back at the university, is a process of self-discovery. And I don't think I would have had that same process without the house here. Not least, I think, because of just how chic it is here. When I came up those stairs for the first time, there is nothing quite like a postmodern chandelier, really to just tell you that you're home. And I remember speaking to Maria's predecessor at the time, who told me that scaffolding needed to be put up just to dust it. Nothing really gets much more stylish than that. As I came to the end of my master's in Linda, I got the distinction. I thought through many of the memories that I'd had, coffee room conversations that led then to late night pub trips and discussions that now I look back and realise have turned to lifelong friendships. And I exhausted my peers by playing said grand piano downstairs in the annex ad nauseam. Mica was a steward. I think this is the way that I think of her, and I was so honoured to meet her on several occasions, including on Zoom, which was always quite good fun. She was gentle, she was kind, and she was wise, and I loved so much the paternal, as I say, stewardly manner that she had with all of us. I've been named by the BBC as a new generation thinker and continue to communicate the fruits of the Ertegun Scholarship along the way. So I suppose to you all, thank you for letting me speak a little today, but mostly thank you to Mica. We love you and we are so grateful.
Hello, good afternoon. I must say this isn't the first time that I've stood here wishing that I'd printed out notes to speak from. The standard's very high, and I'm getting flashbacks of about 6 years ago at a seminar that I wasn't too well prepared for either. But yeah, my name's David Bell. I was an Ertegun Scholar from 2017 to 2019. I studied for the MPhil for classical archaeology. I'm now a senior program manager at a charity called the Sutton Trust, where we focus on social mobility, particularly through the lens of education. I'll always be incredibly thankful to Mica for what she did in creating the Ertegun Scholarship. I think clearly from what we've already heard from other alums and will from those who speak after me, what she did went far beyond simply paying for people to undertake their studies and covering their course fees and so on. However, I do think that financial aspect is something that should never be overlooked or underestimated. Education is regrettably not free, and all too often it's simply whether you can pay or whether you can't pay that makes the difference in whether you access some of the greatest educational opportunities that are out there, such as humanities degrees at Oxford. And obviously this problem is even more so the case for master's degrees, and particularly master's degrees in humanities. So personally, I was the first in my family to ever go to university. I grew up in a fairly low-income household. Paying my own way through the MPhil at Oxford would never have been on the cards for me. So Mica, through her generosity, genuinely made something go from being quite impossible to being a reality. And then I had the opportunity to spend 2 incredible years studying a subject that I love, surrounded by brilliant people. I didn't go on to a DPhil or a PhD in archaeology, and I don't work in archaeology either, but I can certainly say that my experience at Oxford and my experiences of being an Ertegun Scholar has continued to echo throughout my life and have a massive impact on where I am now, including in the job that I'm doing now, which focuses entirely on trying to offer those transformative educational opportunities to young people who, through no fault of their own, are unlikely to be able to take them up. And yeah, I think as somebody said earlier, trying to pay that forward, Mica's generosity to other people who are out there. So yeah, this is something that will continue to, I think, impact me for the rest of my life, and I really don't think many days or weeks will go by without me reflecting incredibly positively and nostalgically on my time at Ertegun House. So thank you, Mica. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Conor Brennan, also getting flashbacks to being a bit underprepared at this podium and also constantly underdressed in the kind of glamorous surroundings of Ertegun House. I was here in 2017-18, so the first year of David's scholarship for an MST in Modern Languages in German, and now I'm also back in Oxford since last year as a departmental lecturer in German. And I'd definitely like to echo what David said and what others have said already, which is that I just wouldn't have been here if not for Mica, if not for her generosity, if not for the scholarship. And so I think that is probably the number one thing to say thank you for. But I guess there's the issue of kind of getting here, how you managed to make your way to Oxford and fund your studies. And then there's what happens when you actually are here, when you arrive. And I think like a lot of people coming to Oxford from outside the UK, even just from very nearby Ireland in my case, I was a bit apprehensive about Oxford as a place, and I wasn't especially drawn to the ethos of the institution overall, at least as I sort of perceived it and its kind of history and connotations. But for me, Ertegun House became a kind of vital subculture within that, its own sort of mini college with quite a different ethos and outlook that I really, really valued. I found when I arrived in Ertegun House and was surrounded by all these brilliant scholars from all over the world that I was much more parochial than I had realized, still feeling that today. And this set of fellow students from all kinds of different places, all kinds of disciplinary backgrounds, really did challenge my assumptions about the world in ways that I only kind of fully realized after I had left and that were more formative than I realized at the time, that kind of played out in the subsequent years. And the other thing that I really appreciated about the program here, about my time in Ertegun House, was that I was kind of struggling during the Masters. I was having a bad time, and I was quite unsure about trying to do any more humanities study or research, whether I was cut out for it, whether I kind of belonged in a world like this. And I think the thing that surprised me most here was that these people whose profiles I had read when I was applying, going through this very exciting application process that others have outlined, who seemed just kind of impossibly smart and accomplished and multi-talented and cultured. I was just surprised to find that these were also very kind, approachable human beings who sometimes did hold forth enthusiastically about their research topics, but also sometimes rocked up to the house with bedhead and rings under their eyes and seemed to be struggling too. And so both kind of academically and on a personal level, that did help to sort of restore my faith in what we're doing here with humanities study, how it kind of fits with everyday life and with kind of more sort of pragmatic everyday values. And it did also make me feel like maybe I do belong more than I had thought. And for that, of course, I'd like to thank everyone in Ertegun House and everyone I met as part of the program. But most of all, I'd like to thank Mica. Thank you, Mica.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Song Junhe, and I joined Ertegun in 2021. And now I'm finishing my DPhil thesis on Manchu phonology. It's a great honor to stand here today to celebrate the legacy of Mica, whose generosity has profoundly shaped my journey in the humanities, to enable me to collect data on the remaining 12 speakers of Manchu in a remote village in northeastern China. Thanks to her support, I do not only have the freedom to pursue my studies with the peace of mind, but also a great table and everything. But also the chance to join a community that embodies the depth and diversity of the humanities. It is because of Mica that I have had the privilege of being guided by the extraordinary Gervais, Maria, and Jonathan, as well as my fellow Ertegun scholars, from whom I have gained so much knowledge and courage. Education is difficult, and humanity education is even more difficult, as my mom, who has been studying science and medicine for her whole life, she didn't understand why I needed to take a recorder with me to go to this village for a month to collect language data. But as Chinese proverb says, it takes 10 years to grow a tree and 100 years to nurture a person. As we gather here today, Oxford itself, with its century-old tradition of humanities education, continues to nurture and inspire minds. And Ertegun House now is over a decade, cultivating such a unique space where scholars can flourish. Mica's generosity is the seed and soil that nourish both the tree planted today and all scholars who have grown with the Ertegun community. Both the tree and the community will continue to flourish in the years ahead. I'm deeply grateful to be part of Mica's legacy, and I'm committed to honoring her memory by upholding the values she has instilled in us all. Thank you, Mica.
Hello, I'm Setaya Shdashti. I did a MSc in Asian and Middle Eastern Studies as an Ertegun scholar in 2020 to 2021, and I'm currently a final year DPhil student in same subject. I also was born in a family where no one could understand why I'm doing humanities. I did mathematics and physics in a gifted school in high school, and then I changed my subject to humanities, and I had to fight with my parents for years and years and years, and when I finished my undergrad, all of my friends were receiving all these fully funded PhD offers from all these like tech universities in the US, and I really had no idea what I'm going to do with my life. But this is not what I'm going to talk about today. What I'm going to talk about today is what this scholarship meant to me. I come from Iran, and receiving full funding to come to Oxford is a privilege for everyone. It's an amazing opportunity for everyone. But it doesn't mean the same thing to all people who could receive it. For me, and for many people like me, spending a year or a couple of years in Oxford is not just a gap year. It's not just a chance to kind of be in a historical city. It's the most drastic change that a life can experience. When I received my funding from Oxford, not only my life changed, but my family's life also changed. I came to Oxford, and suddenly all the scholars in my field who wouldn't answer my emails were so enthusiastic to meet with me. All these countries who would not give me a visa to go to conferences and summer schools were suddenly so eager to have me as a scholar, as a guest in their countries. My family was able to come to Europe for the first time to visit me. I was able to receive multiple offers from universities in the US to go there and study my PhD, universities that wouldn't even think about my application before I came to Oxford. Funding from Oxford, for some people, can transform lives in generations. And my life changed. My brother's life changed. I was able to use the techniques that I used from my Ertegun scholarship to find him a scholarship to go to Canada and do a fully funded program over there. My family's life changed. My future children's life will be changed. And I cannot even... there were times where the scholarship gave me safety and gave me freedom. Thank you, everyone, for making this happen, and thank you, Mica, for transforming my life.
Well, Seti made me cry. And I think I'm not the only one in the room. I think this is the first time I've stood here and cried. So thank you for the new experience. And I'm a bit out of chronological order. I started here in 2016. I've been here for quite a long time. I did an MPhil here for the first 2 years, then I was away for a year, and then I came back for a DPhil, which has been protracted. Because my life has taken various turns that
to me at least, feel a little bit non-traditional in this day for a postgraduate student. I've had a son during my DPhil studies, and so I've gone part-time. I also met my husband here in Oxford, so a very great deal in my life stems directly from the gift that Mica gave to me, because so much of my personal life originated here. It's almost as if my life has two chapters, the before and the after, because socially I've been very much more grounded in Oxford than previously. I have a bicultural background and grew up in several countries, so I was always the new kid, the immigrant kid. And here in Oxford, I've just been able to be a person, which is rather charming in its way, it's freeing. So my thank you to Mica is very personal, because this community has been a place that's been a buffer for me. It's been grounding through the large life changes that I've gone through, both coming to Oxford and then being here in Oxford. So it's not just for those of us who stay for a further degree, a 1 or 2 year thing, or for some who do a DPhil here longer, but a single degree program, and then all of a sudden you're out and you can maybe come back once for tea or something. It's very, very valuable how welcoming this community is to alumni and how integrated the alumni are able to remain. If we're here, even just for a few days, you see people come through who are just in Oxford for the weekend, and often they'll still know some of us, and it's for that weekend like they were never away, and I don't see that in other scholarships here in Oxford. So my thanks centers on that, on the community that Mica's made through her generosity. Thank you to Mica.
Distinguished guests and dear friends, good afternoon. For those I've not met, hello, I'm Carmen. I graduated from the program a year ago, and I now work for the Ashmolean Museum, and my boss is in the audience, and I didn't know that was going to happen, so hi, Za. I was asked to share about a mass that was offered for Mica in Oxford this past January by Stefan and Michele, so that's what I'm going to do. When I heard about Mica's passing, I was saddened, having always hoped to thank her in person one day. Wanting a mass said for the repose of her soul, I turned to Father Andrew, a longtime resident alumnus of Ertegun House, who returned to his confreres and his flock in Istanbul this past spring. I had originally imagined something small. Maybe only my husband and I would visit the conventual Franciscan friary on Magdalen Road where Father lived. But the event grew, that happens around Andrew, as Andrew's superior agreed that we could invite more guests. Father made chili and cornbread for lunch, and my husband and I brought a lentil stew. Maria provided a framed picture of Mica, Imogen led the hymns, and following in the footsteps of Mica's ecumenical work, Mikey led a time of reflection after the Mass. As we were reflecting, Herman reminded us to remember Mica, not just for what she gave, but for who she was as a whole person. A tastemaker, a designer, a peacemaker, a friend. I've since been reflecting on Mica as an educator, because I believe that she taught with her life that the purpose of education is not simply a job, nor a degree, not even distinctions. Rather, one of the most beautiful things we can do, as Mica did, is to put our blessings, including our education, in the service of others. I often tell visitors that Ertegun House was designed with love, because Mica had a heart for communities and the technical excellence gleaned from her own studies and work to anticipate the needs of all who would come through. Staff, scholars, our colleagues, friends, and families. This love frees us to love our work and one another. The success of Mica's design is most evident when deep loves cultivated here do not fade when we leave, because we carry out into the world a love for the humanities, for community building, and for friendships formed in this house. Indeed, Father Andrew says to send his love to all of you, and that today he is offering another Mass for us, especially for Mica. So thank you, Mica, not only for changing lives through the Ertegun program, but also for teaching us to use our education to love. Eternal rest grant unto Mica, O Lord. Let perpetual light shine upon her. May she rest in peace.
tēnā koutou. Haere mai rā e te manuhiri tuārangi e, haere mai rā. E te rangatira, tēnā koe. Ka mihi ki te mana whenua o Aotearoa, ko Aotautahi te kāinga, engari kei nārani o e noho ana, ko Isabella tēnei e mihi ana ki a koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Bienvenides, bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Sean todos ustedes. Es un honor formar parte de este evento en conmemoración de nuestra fundadora y lideresa Mica Ertegun. Mi nombre es Verónica Mondragón Paredes y vengo de una familia de trabajadores del campo y del hogar en México, una familia que me dio las herramientas para conseguir la beca Ertegun.
Good afternoon and welcome to everyone joining us today. I particularly acknowledge His Beatitude and to everyone who's travelled to be here, joining us to celebrate this occasion along with so many who've been touched by Mica Ertegun's life and work. My name is Isabella, and though I never met Mica, I am very lucky to count myself as one of those people. I come from Ōtautahi Christchurch in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but a year ago I moved to Oxford. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't received this scholarship.
Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Mondragón Paredes, and I am from Mexico City. I'm the daughter of a family of agricultural workers who, through sacrifice, labor, and love, gave me the tools to earn the Ertegun Scholarship, which is the most generous scholarship in the humanities in the University of Oxford. I joined Isabella here as the representatives of the last Ertegun cohort that started our term in Ertegun House whilst our benefactor Mica Ertegun was still with us in this world. I join her and welcome you all. Again, it is an honor to be here celebrating her life. Back home in Mexico, I entered the job market amidst the turbulent era of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a consultant for a tech company, I worked on international projects and helped multiple companies achieve their software goals. But something was missing. I had gone to university for a degree in international relations because I was interested in how gender violence operates not only in my home country, but also abroad. And I did not wish to restrict my study to policy, which is very important, but I also sought to include literary and cinematic narratives as aesthetics domains of inquiry in this topic. With such a diverse background, some might say quite chaotic, I was worried that my application would not be taken seriously. Thankfully, it was, and thankfully, it was to the highest level. Having completed the MSc in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies this past summer, I am able to say that such a diversified background has given me tools to understand the operations of structural and cultural inequalities whilst teaching me about the value of the humanities and their contributions to other fields.
As we reflect upon our chance to be part of Mica's vision, I also want to acknowledge the teachers who helped me and who helped us to get here. For me, that means both those at my home university, Te Herenga Waka Victoria University of Wellington, but for me that also means those who are out in the field, working at the flax roots of struggles for social justice. Following my Ertegun Master's year, I've continued on to the DPhil, working on contemporary politics and religion with an eye to peacemaking and progressive change. In this work, I'm led by those taking up that challenge on the ground. Mica had a vision about students enlarging their knowledge and exchanging their ideas. At a time when universities, students, staff are squeezed as never before, that simple vision of pursuing knowledge and financial security and a safe, stable work environment becomes only more beautiful and only more urgent.
Mica's objective was also for scholars to extend their vision during their time in Oxford, and with the help of everyone here at Ertegun House, from my predecessors to our director Jonathan Cross and our administrator Maria Kuoromali, who is actually acknowledged in the dissertation that I submitted, I am happy to say that Mica's legacy will live on through all of us alumni and all the scholars to come.
This space isn't just about students reading and talking to each other about the stuff they know. as important as hard-won alumni wisdom and shortcuts to book recommendations were to my year as a scholar. It's also about the as-yet unseen, the resurgent and the unimagined. I've loved starting to get to know the new scholars this month. I can't wait to be challenged, to be surprised, to be moved, not just by what they're doing, but how and why they're doing it. Mica's vision is very much alive, and we can all, I think, learn something from its example. He ko tuku rerengatahi, a white heron flies once. Ngā mihi nui, kia koe. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, and thank you, Mica.
Thank you so much to all of the alumni who could come here in person, and for your heartfelt thanks to Mica for reminiscing about the times that we've had in the house and for spreading the lessons that Mica has instilled in each and one of us, for contributing to the world with love, with peace, with vigor, with desire to help others in the way that Mica has helped us. My name is Stefan Nitu. As Michele has introduced me before, I came to Ertegun House in 2018 for a master's. I am yet to leave. I'm finishing a DPhil in ancient history. And I've lived in many countries, but I am Romanian at heart. And on my passport, of course. And, you know, Romanians don't do humanities. You know, Romania still today is on the outside of Europe looking in. And so you'll find Romanians at Oxford, but you'll find them in IT, you'll find them in computer science, you'll find them in business. And so for me to have the opportunity to take this scholarship, to be on the cusp of next year publishing a book about the humanities and the most pressing challenges they face and the opportunities that they have, a book that came out of an Ertegun conference, a book that has Stephanie, Connor, people you've heard from before, writing on this book alongside with Hetan Shah, Chief Executive of the British Academy, on the same book. This is all only possible thanks to Mica, and I'm eternally grateful for this. You know, Mica, for those of you who don't know, of course, Mica is Romanian. Mica is not her real name. Mica was born Ioana Maria Banu in Romania. Interestingly enough, she was destined for greatness because her last name in Romanian means coin. And the name of the maiden name of her mother is Gologan, which is another slang word for money. But success came to her, as it comes to all of us, in varied paths. Her father was royal physician to Romania's last king, King Michael. And when the communists took over Romania, she had to flee. First to Switzerland, then to Canada, and then eventually to the United States, where she built an incredible life, which we're going to hear about, not just today, but we're going to hear about for the rest of our own lives, because we carry her memory with us. So, you know, when I came to Ertegun House, Linda very, very graciously asked me to say a few words to Mica in our shared language. And I told her, vă mulțumesc din tot sufletul pentru o oportunitate care nu există în momentul ăsta pentru România și pentru alte țări care nu ajung să fie la Oxford de obicei. I thank you, Mica, from the bottom of my heart for giving me this opportunity that just does not exist to Romanians, to countries, like Seti mentioned, for whom this just simply means a little more. And although she couldn't reply at the time, I could see just how much she cared. I could see the tears starting to well up in her eyes. And I think we care too. And I think there are so many more people than we've gathered here today who care. And because of that, I solicited them to send a little video tribute. So you're about to hear from other alumni from the program, a little highlights reel of what Mica's done for them too. We're going to play a little video for you, so I hope you enjoy it.
For your great and good colleagues that we met.
How beautiful, what a great honor, Mica.
I'm Mica Ertegun. I want to talk to you about the Mica and Ahmet Ertegun Graduate Scholarship in the Humanities, which I have funded in perpetuity. The first scholarship at Oxford was created by the concert that Led Zeppelin gave in.
In December 2007, we came together at the O2 Arena in London to pay tribute to the life of Ahmet and perform in his honour.
The money raised at our concert enabled the establishment of a perpetual Ahmet Ertegun Scholarship at the University of Oxford.
After being in contact with professors and students, I realized that there is a necessity for spaces where they can read, write, think, and communicate. With the help of Oxford, I will create the Ertegun House for Studies. Ahmet and I felt that the opportunity for graduate studies at Oxford in the humanity area could bring the world together by intellectually removing barriers.
I have so many wonderful memories of Ertegun House and its community. I remember coming into the house on the first day and feeling as though I had just stepped into Hogwarts. There was magic in the air, and I knew something was about to happen.
And I'd like to share this small incident that happened to me once while I was complaining about my residential college, which shall remain undisclosed. And a faculty member from All Souls heard me and he said, "Why are you complaining about your college? You are, in fact, in the best of all possible colleges, the Ertegun College." And that's when I realized that really the place where I spend most of my time, where most of my friends are, where in fact I have most of my meals, was indeed the Ertegun House.
And I also think of that time as the 3 years when I was indulging in an amazing amount of culture. I have so many memories of all of our activities, whether it was climbing across the roof of the Natural History Museum in Oxford or being the only people in the British Museum when we went for an exclusive tour of a new exhibition. It was really one of the best times of my life.
One of the things that I most enjoyed were the scholar presentations and the reading group that often took place at lunchtime. It was a rare chance for me to hear so many brilliant talks.
Some seminars were way too philosophical for me to follow, but one in particular, given by Althea Savani, has stuck with me. Althea was doing her MPhil in linguistics at the time and gave us a talk on how languages work. She explained in detail how to create a new language, and we were her study case. Together, during that seminar, we created our very own Ertegun language. It was fascinating.
I feel so grateful to Mica. You enriched my life intellectually, socially, even physically, as the Ertegun Tennis Club managed to make me run behind a ball, which is a miracle, maybe the biggest of all.
In that year, I really saw and understood the world outside Australia, outside Melbourne, outside Tasmania, and that was a big experience and a good experience, and wouldn't have been possible without this scholarship.
I'm incredibly grateful for Mica Ertegun's vision of providing a home for humanistic inquiry at Oxford. Certainly without her generous bequest and her unstinting support of our scholarship and of my research, I'm not sure that I would have the confidence as a researcher and humanist that I do today.
So I was in the first cohort of Ertegun Scholars back in 2012 when I was studying philosophy at Oxford, and the scholarship made my time there possible, shaping both my research and future career.
So I have a scientific background and I have been working as a civil engineer in Paris and London, but then I really wanted to go back to literature and to literary studies. Thanks to Mica, I was able to come here to the Ertegun House and to the University of Oxford to do a PhD in French and Francophone studies.
The Ertegun Scholarship has not only supported my academic endeavors, but also connected me with a vibrant community of scholars from around the world. I feel incredibly fortunate to have been part of this program.
One thing I'm really grateful for from Ertegun is to have made such amazing friends and intellectual interlocutors and relationships that moved out of St. Giles Street. So first, this is Pat, who was my year. She's an amazing linguist and philologist, and this is actually on a tour that she was leading in the Oxford Bibliophile Society. Here we are in Brussels at an amazing bookbinding place. I never would have been exposed to this world without Pat. This is a photo. Go over here. This is a photo of Emily Cox and I. Emily was the year above me. She's an art historian, and this is us at a synesthetic Baudelaire performance in Oslo, actually, where this is Max Norman and I. Max did the MST in Modern Languages my year. This is us actually in the Hamptons on the 4th of July on vacation together.
In order to express my own debt to Mica, if you'll permit me, I would like to read you a brief paragraph from my PhD dissertation acknowledgements. Receiving the Ertegun Graduate Scholarship to study at Oxford was perhaps the single most important step in my journey to the PhD. At Ertegun House, I met phenomenally brilliant graduate students from a number of fields. Each of them taught me valuable lessons about scholarship and education. A shout out to some special people. Khalid Liamlehi and Michele Bianconi welcomed me into the Ertegun community with open arms. Our late night chats in the house kitchen are amongst the fondest memories of my time at Oxford. What I've just read out to you is now all a matter of permanent record. But even if I could, there is nothing that I would change about it.
Even though I've only just arrived, Ertegun House feels like a space full of warmth and enrichment and encouragement to pursue a better vision for the humanities.
The Ertegun program gave me something really special. It allowed me to study in Oxford, become a philosophy professor, and to hang out with incredibly inspiring young academics. And really changed my life, I would say.
In all my interactions with Mrs. Ertegun, she was unfailingly kind, generous, and always had a really good sense of humor. And I will miss her at future alumni events.
I'm now a lecturer and researcher at a university in Germany, in Mainz, and I profit every day from the time spent in Oxford and at Ertegun House.
The Ertegun Scholarship is among the most beautiful gifts I've ever received. It provided me with an intellectual community and a home at Oxford until this day. Mica Ertegun is the person who made all of that possible through her generosity, and I was so sorry to hear of her passing. I'm eternally grateful to her.
Every year that I was at Ertegun House, I watched closely for the blossoming of the wisteria in the garden. This spring, here in Stellenbosch, near the tip of the African continent, I've been finding myself spotting wisteria everywhere. Mica Ertegun's vision of a community of graduate students in the humanities supporting and inspiring each other in their work has changed my life in so many ways. Lifelong friendships and indeed, my career. But Ertegun has also made me a sworn wisteria spotter.
Thank you so much, Mica, for your incredible generosity in setting up the Ertegun programme. It has had such a positive impact on so many people's lives, including mine, and we are so grateful for the opportunity that you've given us all.
And I'm coming at you from Edith Wharton's home, the Mount, in the Berkshires, to say thank you, Mica, for giving me a chance to study at Oxford, which I would not have been able to do without her generous support.
Thank you for your generosity and for your vision and for your enormous spirit, and that's fueled so many of us now through our time at Oxford. Thank you for introducing me to so many wonderful people, and thank you for opening doors for me and for giving me the life and the future that I have now that I would never have had without the Ertegun Scholarship. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Mica.
Thank you, Mica.
Thank you, Mica.
Thank you, Mica.
Thanks again, Mica.
Thank you so much, Mica.
Thank you very much, Mica.
Thank you, Mica, and can we thank Stefan for putting this together? So
we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and hear from some more people about other ventures that Mica has done before eventually coming back and closing it with our very first director, Brian, who's going to speak again about Ertegun, in case you're not bored of Ertegun already. So can we reconvene at maybe 3:20? Just take a short break.
And the next session is shorter.
The next section is indeed shorter. Welcome back, everybody. All right. So we're just about ready. So once again, we're almost finished. So once again, thank you so much to His Beatitude, to all our distinguished guests for being with us today. We have, of course, one guest who is particularly distinguished, who has stayed by our side ever since the first year of the program, who has always spurred us to achieve only the very best at Ertegun House and at Oxford. Linda Vagner needs no introduction. She's a very successful businesswoman, a philanthropist, and such a close friend of Mica.
And a pest.
If you could say a few words.
My best role is being a pest. And there are some great pictures of Mica I see up here in Aphrodisia. But where were we? Nemrod. We went. I want to tell you some fun stories about one or two. Because Mica had a tremendous sense of humor, which nobody really saw, unless you really listened hard, because she spoke in a very low tone of voice, bad for a deaf girl. And she was something else, and she wanted to keep going. And she wanted to keep praying, and she wanted to keep giving. So she decided to go to, correct me, Nemrod. So she said, Linda, we're going to go to Nemrod, which is what is it?
It's a mountain tomb in eastern Turkey.
Okay, so we fly into Nemrod, right? And I see this mountain, and I have bad back, bad knee. There's nothing good about the way I walk. And I'm saying to myself, and I said to her, and she said to me, so I didn't have a choice, so I had to do this. And Bert was there, and also her captain. And they gave me the captain to drag me up the mountain because she was going like a goat with Bert after her, getting up to the top of this mountain. I don't know if you have pictures of that, but it was a kick. And she made fun of me all the way. And, I accepted it and loved it because all of her fun was for fun. It was never for any other reason. And that was at Aphrodisia, where she found this mud hole. After having given some money to Aphrodisia with Ahmed for years, she went with Bert, and I was invited, and she said, that's going to be my pool, right? And what did it become?
A wonderful Versailles-like complex.
Yes. I mean, just the way it was. It was amazing. They found many things. It was 50 AD, I think, or thereabouts. They found another city underneath it. They found things to be proud of and things to be reminiscent with of times gone by. But the one thing about today, first of all, I don't have any notes. You'll be thankful. No pages to turn. And if you want, I could go. But, you all in different ways, and God bless you, your beatitude. Thank you for coming here and gracing us with your presence. She would be thrilled, as she was when you came to visit her in New York, and of course at the Holy Sepulchre. But the amazing thing is you're all talking about her mission statement. You repeated the mission statement. Each of the graduates, Ertegun scholars in their own way, said it. And I think if I could say anything today that would make her happy, this would have thrilled her, and she would have been, very teary to have witnessed it, especially her part in it. You could see it up there. But she lived the mission statement, and she wrote the mission statement. And one day, someone said, back 14 years ago, Mica, you need a mission statement. So we were on our way to Aphrodisia. I was on a trip from work. She was on a trip to fix Aphrodisia. I mean, I wanted to do 1 minute. She wanted to do 3 hours. So then we get this call on still a phone. And she looked at me and said, we need a mission statement. Remember that? I don't know if you remember that. And I said, you need a mission statement. I'll just hang it up. And she wrote that mission statement. And today at the meeting with all the students from this year, I asked them, to walk into Ertegun House, look at the mission statement every time they come through and live it, because it's sharing, it's cooperating, it's being philanthropic, and more than anything else, it's caring. So with that, I will say thank you. I love and respect what you're trying to do for yourselves, but equally important for each other, and we'll see you.
Thank you so much, Linda, for your words and for supporting the program as you've been doing throughout its history. We're now moving to the very final part of this event, in which three more distinguished speakers will have the floor. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the first one, Professor Christopher Brown, who's an art historian, particularly an expert of Flemish painting, and served as director of the Ashmolean Museum between 1998 and 2014. Please.
Well, you've heard all the inspiring young people, and you've heard the no less inspiring. And I'm afraid now it's the turn for the old dull men. And I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to pay tribute to Mica, a remarkable woman who I got to know well when we worked together on the Ashmolean Museum. And I think you're going to see some shots of the Ertegun Gallery at the Ashmolean. I was first introduced to Mica by Michael Cunningham, who was then the director of the University of Oxford's Development Department in New York. He was an excellent fundraiser for the university. He should be here today, because it was Michael who first interested Mica in that obscure educational charity which we know of as the University of Oxford. I was the director of the Ashmolean at that time and took Mica and her dear friend and advisor, Linda Vagner, who we just heard from, around the museum. Mica was particularly interested in the connections between and the mutual influences of civilizations, East and West, which a collection as rich and as deep as the Ashmolean makes possible. At that moment, we were underway with an ambitious program of rebuilding and redisplay, and wished to stress this cross-cultural approach to the collections. We called this undertaking Crossing Cultures, Crossing Time, and the idea, spelled out in various publications, was to display the collections on a number of routes through the building which drew attention to cross-cultural links. Of course, if your interest is exclusively in Japanese art, you can simply go directly to the Japanese galleries, but you can also look at Japanese art in a wider context by going via other galleries or indeed onto other galleries. And this aspect of our plans especially appealed to Mica, perhaps unsurprisingly, given that she was born in Romania, she lived in New York, she was married to a man of Turkish descent. And the Ahmet and Mica Ertegun Gallery at the Ashmolean explores cross-cultural contacts of this type. And I discussed the contents of the gallery with Mica in considerable detail. And she was particularly insistent that there should be a close collaboration between the Ertegun scholars and the museum, which of course I welcomed and which is thriving. I visited Mica often in New York, where she lived amongst her own eclectic and fascinating collection, paintings. I noticed Magritte and Hockney as we were looking at the video, ceramics, textiles of very great quality, and of course in the house in Southampton too. But the time that is most vivid in my mind, Linda, is the stay at her house in Bodrum on the Turkish coast. Bodrum, site of what remains of the mausoleum of Halikarnassus, has been developed in recent years as a tourist resort, it has to be said. As you walk along the seafront there are numerous bars and pounding music, you suddenly come to the exterior of a very fine Ottoman house. On entering, you step into a glorious garden, and this is Mica's house, furnished with marvelous taste, evoking an elegant vision of Ottoman times. Outside on the seafront is a wonderful wooden boat, a goulet, I think I've pronounced that correctly, which takes you and Mica and Linda into the bay, and you swim from the boat before eating a delicious meal prepared by the staff and served on the deck. Then, of course, a long doze in the afternoon. Bert Smith will speak about trips to Aphrodisias in which I participated, but I'm afraid that it is swimming in the bay, lively conservation over excellent food, and dozing afterwards, which are most vivid in my memory. Mica was kind, she was generous, she was alert to art and ideas, and she had very great taste. And she is much missed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is my great pleasure to introduce our second speaker. We've already heard teasers of Displaced Aphrodisias, and I think Professor Bert Smith is here to tell us a little bit more. Professor Bert Smith, Lincoln Professor of Classical Archaeology here at Oxford. He is the curator of a wonderful cast gallery in the Ashmolean, and he's been directing the excavations at Aphrodisia since 1991. Generously funded, of course, by Mica. So please welcome Bert.
Thank you very much indeed, Stefan, for the kind introduction. I knew Mica well in various locales in New York, Bodrum, and up Mount Nemrut with Linda, but I knew her best at Aphrodisias in Caria in southwest Turkey, where Mica was a frequent visitor and team worker, as you see on the screen now. You see her sorting Ottoman sherds from the pool. Aphrodisias is an extremely well-preserved ancient city, and Mica's pool lies between what is obviously the theatre and the green patch in the middle. That's that long, 170-metre long white pool. Aphrodisias is located in southwest Turkey, where the red arrow points, and it was famed for its wonderful marble sculptures. You see here a portrait of the 2nd century AD, a young aristocrat, and a rather surly-looking Roman governor on the right of the early 6th century. In 2011, Mica offered serious support to Aphrodisias. She chose her own difficult project where a lot of major work was needed. Then, as it was called then, South Agora looked like this in 2011. You can see the end of the pool there and some colonnades around it, but otherwise it's completely covered with trees and a thick overburden. It looks very unpromising. Mica said, I want to do the pool. I want the pool to be mine. She was inspired by a Greek inscription, which is on the gate into the pool area, which talks about a late antique benefactor called Flavius Ampelius, who talks about the nymphs who are grateful because Ampelius gave wonder and splendid beauty to this place of palms, so that anyone among our waters who turns around his glance may sing the praise both of him and of the place and of the nymphs, the water nymphs, that is. So this place was not the South Agora at all, we thought, but a large palm park, a public park with palm trees around it. This really caught Mica's imagination, and we did a pilot season in 2012. And immediately in the mud at the bottom, We found palm tissue. You see Mark Robinson diagnosing it under the microscope. And we found planting trenches around the pool. And you see trenches there and the kind of Cretan date palm that would have been planted there. So we then began a 5-year excavation program, very generously funded by Mica. It was by hand, in phase. That means you excavate over the whole thing all at the same time. So you go down over the whole thing, so you get to see, as you see in these two different year pictures, you see on the left Ottoman farmsteads, and on the right a rather desolate medieval emptiness. There was very bad weather, there were floods, there was windstorms, but we reached the bottom of the pool, the early Roman level, the early 1st century AD, bang on time at the end of 2017. And you see here the pool as excavated, 170 meters long, 30 meters wide, surrounded by a beautiful Ionic colonnade and by palm trees. This was a leisure palm park for citizens to feel like they really deserved it, for the wind to blow across the pool and for them to sit under the trees. At the very end of 2017, we made a picture like this with a small thank you to Mica. We set up signs at both ends of the pool, which explain the history and archaeology of the complex and acknowledge the wonderful gift that made all this possible. We also engaged in the intense study of the results, and there was an extraordinary amount of material that came from the pool. All this evidence, the 5 years of intense excavation with 70, 80 men, can be condensed into one image. It looks like this. This is a 3D reconstruction of what the pool would have looked like, with palm trees, colonnades around it. All the way down to the frog fountain. That is not a piece of imagination. We have 3 of those frogs. Every part of this reconstruction is based on solid archaeological evidence. This reconstruction now forms the frontispiece of the publication of the whole volume. This is a big, thick book written by 17 authors that makes available all aspects of the history and archaeology, from the 1st century to the 19th century. There were very rich finds at the bottom of the pool. The pool went out of use in the early 7th century and was used thereafter as a kind of dump. People threw stuff into it, heavier stuff only got to the sides, lighter stuff went into the middle. I just show you just a random conspectus of some of these finds. You see the side of the pool there with the side excavated stratigraphically. It's like the tide went out. And in amongst that rubble, we found a lot of marbles, and further in, we find things like those beautiful reliquary crosses, rolled lead tablets, and coins. The marble perimeter of the pool was covered in a huge quantity of graffiti and drawings and text messages, which you see the epigraphic team diagnosing here. I show you one example that comes from where that red arrow is. These are drawn by people sitting on the edge of the pool who just happen to have a hammer and chisel in their bag. Here's a typical it's a typical text message with 2 pictures. Collatron, the chief gold worker, whom his God will remember. He's a Christian gold worker. And those are 2 portraits of athletes, one wearing a crown on the left and one with what looks like a wire coming out of his head. That's not a wire, that's the one lock of hair that professional athletes had. They're obviously portraits. Portraits of a different kind were found in great quantity at the bottom of the pool. I show you one here, a very early piece. This is a portrait of an imperial prince of the 1st century AD, the time the pool was first conceived and built. 1st century AD all the way through to the 6th century AD, where we find extraordinary portraits like this with a man with what looks like a clown's hairstyle. We might think this looks funny, risible, but in actual fact was the peak of fashion in the early 6th century. This is in fact one of the very last marble portraits made at the site and in antiquity in general. Yes, antiquity was indeed a strange place. I would like to end with just a few photographs of Mica at Aphrodisias. Here's Mica in our large marble depot, posing with a pediment from a large aristocratic house, which has inside it Aphrodite on a shell with two tritons. Here she is on the left, admiring or disputing the quality of the backside of this young hero with our conservator, Trevor Proudfoot. On the right, I think she has an expression of, well, skepticism about what is being told to her by Andrew Wilson, the excavator. We see her here in the pool during operations, supervising the work together with Linda. After the hard work,
Get me out of here.
we did get you out of here. We got you to the tree at the end.
That's it, I got the tree.
This is the tree at the end of the pool where tired workers retreated to recuperate.
And the man under the tree is?
That's the noble Christopher Brown, who was then, of course, part of our team. It was a pleasure to have him with us. I end with a very nice picture of Mica and Linda under the same tree. Linda was the guardian angel of the whole South Agora project, and I'm intensely grateful to her for seeing it through. And I'm also intensely grateful to Mica, who made the whole thing possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Bert. And our last speaker, Brian Ward Perkins, doesn't need much of an introduction. Historian and archaeologist, he is, most importantly for our purposes, I think, the first Ertegun director and senior scholar in residence, and I was lucky enough to be a scholar in his last year as director. He's been incredibly supportive of the whole community and in recent times of the Alumni Society, so it's my really great pleasure to leave him the stage, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Michele. And it is obviously a huge pleasure to be here. I'm to talk about the Ertegun programme, and I don't really need to say very much because we have heard such eloquent testimony about it from the various alumni. It's been an absolutely fantastic afternoon to hear that. But what I want to say is that, like all good institutions, the Ertegun programme has a good origin myth. I mean, Rome obviously had Romulus and Remus, but the Ertegun programme has the story of Led Zeppelin reforming to produce a concert in honour of Ahmet, who had supported them so strongly, of then giving money to Mica, of Mica deciding that this money should be spent charitably in Britain, because Led Zeppelin were a British band. At this point, doubtless Michael Cunningham, very nice man, gets involved, and Oxford University acquires a graduate scholarship for a Turkish undergraduate, which is still happening today. And from that, visits to Oxford come by Mica and Linda, and a relationship is formed. So that's the myth. Now, unlike the Romulus and Remus myth, it's actually true, but of course, it's only one side of the story. It's providing a nice little human story, to tell you about how this thing came about. Because underneath that, of course, there is a different reality, and that different reality is Mica and Amit and their personalities and their vision. They shared a passionate belief in the creative arts and in the humanities, not necessarily quite the same ones. I don't think Mica was ever terribly fond of rock music, for instance. Rumour has it that she wasn't terribly. But they did share this passion for creative arts and the humanities. And, crucially, Mica supported Amit in one of the most important things he did, which was to encourage new talent and to bring young people forward in their profession. And finally, we have Mica with a desire to create a permanent memorial to Amit and to herself. I mean, those are the real foundations. The myth story is true and charming, but actually what we need to focus on are those three, key factors in the creation of the programme. There then comes visits to Oxford with Linda, who's always been extraordinarily important in the creation of the programme, and a bit of chance, or perhaps actually providence, because one of the things that Mica wanted to do was not just fund individual scholarships, important though that is, and we have heard how important that is for individual people this afternoon, but she wanted to create a community. And by chance, the Humanities Division, with Sally Shuttleworth, who I'm pleased to see is here, at its head, occupied some rather run-down offices in a slightly shabby house at the top of St Giles, 37A. And Mica immediately realised that this was actually had huge potential and would be the perfect place to create her community. The university was persuaded to give this building over to the programme, and they did absolutely the right thing. And then Mica, with her sense of taste and with her awareness that actually communities need beautiful spaces, they need to feel, in fact we heard this afternoon, you need to feel that you come in and you see the chandelier, you see the staircase, and you actually feel, I'm somewhere special. And something we haven't heard about, that every single student should have a desk with a spectacularly comfortable chair. I've never been so comfortable in my working life. And that they should be able to access that desk and that chair 24/7, 365 days a year, including Christmas, which is what happened. And therefore, what came about was not just a series of graduate scholarships, but a community. Now, I don't think I need to talk about the importance of that, because I think we really have heard a lot about that from the people who were impacted by that. But I can say, because I was the first director here, that it worked for me. It was the best professional 4 years of my life. I worked at the front there, I had the door open, I said hello to everybody, we had a chat, we had serious talks, we had the seminar on a Wednesday, we went on cultural events, and I learnt an enormous amount. And also, which I think we also got this afternoon, it was fun. It wasn't always dead serious, but actually fun matters. And something that I also heard this afternoon, which I really liked to hear, was it was supportive. Not everybody was necessarily going through the best of times, but actually this was a community that was an intellectual community, a fun community, and a supportive community. I am proud to be an Ertegun alumnus, and I thank Mica very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's one thing we absolutely have to say, though, before we break, which is thank you to Michele and Stefan for putting on a wonderful thing. I was a little nervous, particularly when I discovered quite how hot it was up here, and when I realised we had quite a lot to get through, and when I knew that Linda does like things to move along at some speed, but the minute that the alumni started opening their mouths, that nervousness went, because we really have had a very, very good afternoon. So thank you, Stefan and Michele.
Well, there's not much left to say, and I am pleased to say that we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule. It's our turn to really thank in 30 seconds really everyone who made this possible, starting, of course, with Brian, Maria, Jonathan, the entirety of the Ertegun board. I'm not going to name you by names, but you're all here, you know who you are. And the development office as well. Our speakers, all of them, alumni and distinguished guests. And I think I say the alumni are also distinguished guests in this sort of event. So everyone really, and all attendees, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you, Mica.
Thank you, Mica.